Hey, y'all, Zach McDonald, your real estate agent with Real Property Associates, and this is my Seattle Housing Market Watch for September 2nd, 2025. I hope you guys all had an amazing holiday. Back at it here today. And as I'm looking at the data, we saw what we would normally see during a Labor Day holiday week. We saw quite a bit fewer listings this week over last week, 409 listings versus 702. So a lot fewer listings in King and Snohomish County over the past few weeks. But we also saw quite a bit of buyer activity still. And so some of those listings that have been on the market are starting to disappear. And we've been talking about that for a few different months now, that we're seeing the inventory of housing shrinking instead of expanding, which we saw earlier in the summer. And just for an example here, we had 695 pending listings last week and 605 closed sales versus that 409 new listing number. And those numbers were slightly smaller in the pending category than the previous week, but not too far off. But more sold listings here as we wrapped up the month. And overall in King and Snohomish County, we're seeing that the market's just picking up a tiny bit. I've had a few different listings here in the past couple weeks, and we saw two of them in Snohomish County go relatively quickly within a week. And then we have one that's been on about a week here, and that one's in Everett. So $700,000. If you're looking for a first house or a new house in the Everett area, check out our listing on 9th Drive Southeast. And speaking of the market, I think interest rates have been a huge piece in the market starting to heat up here recently. There's been a lot of hope that the interest rates are going to continue to drop on mortgages. We saw a slight drop week over week. We had 6.62 in our last update on 8/22, and we have rates right around 6.53. And these are both numbers coming from the Mortgage News daily survey of mortgage rates. And so it's a great place, if you haven't heard me say this before, to pay attention to the rates and where they're at on a given day and to kind of see those trends. It also has the other different loan types that are most common. You've got the 15-year, the jumbo, the ARM, the 30-year FHA, and also the VA on here. So you've got lots of different loan types that you can pay attention to. Of course, certain programs are for certain groups of people, if you qualify for VA or FHA, and then the income qualifications more for those other types depending on the loan amounts. Now, let's talk about King County here a little bit. Over the past couple weeks, we've seen the median sales price around $930 in King County. $912,500 was the median sales price a couple weeks back. And so prices are remaining relatively the same over the past few weeks and over the whole month. We're going to see some of that new data in the monthly market update. So I'll be talking about that next week. You'll be able to see what the last month looked like. And that's why we do these weekly unpublished stats videos. And then we have the published stats, because we can kind of see what the whole month looked like versus the week at a glance. But the average percent of list price was still right around 99%. So if you're seeing that asking price, just think you're probably paying that as a buyer, unless maybe the price is being pushed a little bit. Maybe it's a little overpriced. But 99% of the asking price is common right now in King County. We're talking about the multiple offer scenarios, and we're seeing a little bit of an uptick in those earlier in the month. It's relatively flattened out here over the past couple weeks. We saw 26% of sales having the multiple offers, which again, pretty consistent, but more than we were seeing in July. And then we're also seeing 10% of sales in the second half of the month with the escalation clause. And we most recently saw 12% of offers getting that escalation addendum. So still getting a little bit of competition on some of the new listings and a little bit more competition than we were seeing, but not super competitive yet. So we're seeing some of the signs of things shifting, but we haven't seen that full shift happening yet. And we'll see. We'll see if it really does get more competitive in the fall. I've talked about this a little bit. I think that the interest rates are the big thing we want to be paying attention to. And if we see the interest rates start to drop, we're going to see a lot more buyer activity. A lot of those buyers that have been sitting on the sidelines have been waiting for, in their minds, a better opportunity to buy. And they're thinking in terms of interest rates, not prices. Right now, prices are probably better than they will be. But interest rates, when they do drop, and if they do drop, will cause prices to rise, but it will make things a little bit more affordable on a monthly basis or in the long term. So I think if you're a buyer, you're thinking, is the price more important to me right now, or the interest rate more important to me? The price is something that you can't really change. Interest rate is something you can change. So if I'm a buyer, I'm thinking not just about when things have already started to get better, but when do I think they are going to get better, right? And so do we think interest rates are going to start coming down? If that's the case, then we know that the housing market is going to follow suit very shortly. And so when we look at the pendings with the financing addendums, again, another symbol or signal of competitiveness. We did see more financing addendums this last couple weeks, 70% versus 67% the previous week. And we did see more inspection addendums as well, 44% there versus 41%. So a little less competitive, but overall we're seeing more competition right now in the month of August as we're looking back than we did in July. If we look at Snohomish County here, similar median sales price, $760 versus $750 approximately. So things didn't change too much from week to week here. The percentage of list price is the same as King County, 99%. So whether you're in King County, Snohomish County, you're close into Seattle, you're expecting to pay close to the asking price as a buyer. Now, there are always exceptions to that rule. There are houses that sit on the market for a little bit for different reasons. Maybe they were priced a little bit high to start with, or maybe there's something undesirable about them. But for the most part, King and Snohomish County, you're still expecting to pay about the asking price. King County was a little bit more competitive than Snohomish County the previous week, but we did see 26% in Snohomish County have multiple offers this last week too. And so we had more competition in Snohomish County. We also saw a little bit more pending sales with that escalation clause, 7% versus the 6%. So again, super small differences here, but seeing more of the multiple offer scenarios tells me that it's a little bit more competitive than it was. And when we were looking at King County, we were talking about how it was a little less competitive. We're seeing the opposite in Snohomish County. It's seeming a little bit more competitive than the previous update, with 74%. Again, these are still less competitive than King County, but 74% of offers having that financing addendum versus 76% the previous week, and then 47% with the inspection versus 48%. So again, small difference, but the opposite direction. But overall, King and Snohomish County both seeing more competition, as we said, than less competition earlier in the summer. And I would expect that September is going to be more competitive than the summer was overall. And then we're going to start to see just fewer and fewer listings coming on the market. And when that happens, you start to see the inventory or the amount of houses shrinking up pretty quickly. And again, depending on what interest rates look like in the beginning of the winter, we are setting ourselves up for a fairly competitive winter and spring housing market here in Seattle. So if you have questions about what this means for you, if you're thinking about maybe making a purchase and trying to figure out timing, or maybe you're a seller and you're thinking, do I put my house on the market now? Do I wait until after the new year? Feel free to reach out with questions. I think each situation's a little bit different, and I'm happy to be a resource for you.